And what's up? Welcome in, everybody. Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark, GC Live Wednesday episode of the show. As always, brought to you by our good friend Clint Hammond of the Mortgage Network. Give Clint a shout, 803-771-6933, or just go check out ClintHammond.com. You can get all the details there. And, of course, Clint will get you hooked up, looking for a new mortgage. Maybe you want to buy a new house. Maybe you want to upgrade, downgrade, or just refinance. Clint can get you in a new home, save you some money, and interest rates have literally, I would say, never been better than they have been the last year or so. So if you're looking at refinancing, great time to give him a call, and I promise you, you can save yourself some money. And we, of course, appreciate Clint every single day for making this show possible as our main primary presenting sponsor. So do us a favor. Obviously, if you're not in the market for a house, don't go buy a house. But if you are in the market for a house or maybe want to try to save some money, do us a favor. Give Clint a chance to earn your business. I promise, he'll take great care of you. Again, ClintHammond.com. Again, I'm Wes. He's Chris. What's up to everybody? Lively chat already. I see some new names on here, I believe. What's up, guys? What's up, girls? Hope you're doing well. Wednesday show, we're going to hit on a lot of sports today, a lot of different sports, I should say, some football talk. Actually, some soccer talk, which I guess is probably a first for the show. I will not be breaking down any soccer plays or anything about soccer, but major announcement from South Carolina today. And then we're, of course, going to talk a little bit of Gamecock baseball as their season continues. Big win as far as the margin of victory last night, an expected win, but a big win over Charleston Southern. South Carolina gets ready for a Thursday, Friday, Saturday matchup. So mark your calendars, not Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. This week, we'll have Colin Taylor joining us probably in about 15 minutes to talk a bit about that as well. Before we dive into the things that we're going to probably go into a little bit more depth on, Chris, let's, for the first time in show history, start with some soccer talk and this announcement from South Carolina. And clearly, I think just, Chris, from the way they handled this thing with having an actual press conference, having, by the way, University of South Carolina and Gamecock Central alum Alyssa Lang was actually at sort of moderating, speaking at the press conference they had. Henry McMaster was there. Bob Caslen was there. And South Carolina clearly is excited about this new partnership. The announcement today that the Gamecocks are the official education partner of MLS, Major League Soccer, of course, and Colin Taylor actually spoke to Dr. Diana Hill Mitchell, no relation. She is the Senior Associate Provost at South Carolina. Free story on Gamecock Central if you want some more details from Colin about what exactly this program means. But, Chris, if you want to go into a couple of details for everybody, it sounds kind of like a true win-win. Obviously, MLS was looking for an educational partner. Yep. But there are a lot of baked-in advantages here for South Carolina as well.
It's a really neat advantage for them. I think it's a no-brainer type thing. And look, I mean, I've made some more calls on this too. Aside from, Colin did a great job covering that, getting the story with some additional details for our readers. But even beyond that, you look at the fact that soccer is the number one sport in the world in terms of how many people watch it, in terms of viewership, Wes. How many people watch it in the world? And it's also, and some people get annoyed when you say this or when I say this, but it's the fastest growing sport in the United States, right? It has continued to rise. You look at just an easy example, soccer, the access to being able to watch soccer on television, whether it's MLS, the domestic league, or just all these European, Spanish leagues, World Cup, all these different things. The access to watch world stage soccer is much more than it was than when we were kids was. You could catch a game here and there, but it's a lot more now. It's really expanded. And so you're tapping into that market if you're South Carolina. And as was explained during the press conference and in Colin Taylor's story, there's some, like you said, Wes, baked in advantages in that South Carolina is going to have signage. You turn on MLS broadcasts, you're going to see the University of South Carolina represented. I think from what I was told, you'll see some commercials for the university. So presumably when if there's an MLS game on a certain network, you're Going to see the University of South Carolina on there. And I think, side note, this is obviously a good deal no matter what for South Carolina, but a couple auxiliary things here. Number one, you might see this replicated, whether it's South Carolina or some other places, with some other leagues, right? Some other professional leagues. I think you could see this type of model going forward. And also, I think this signals the fact that South Carolina is, looking to make a big investment just in soccer as a sport overall. We all know that Mark Burson is his final year at South Carolina, retiring, stepping away from the game. South Carolina, there's been a lot of discussion for many years about the soccer program at South Carolina, and where South Carolina is going with that is they're going to hire a new coach, and they're looking to be really good in men's soccer just as they have been in women's soccer under Shelley Smith. So just a side note there, but getting back to the deal, I think it's a no-brainer and a really good deal for the Gamecocks.
Yeah, and I believe it's going to include some potential internship possibilities for current South Carolina students, which will be awesome. I'm curious to see, Chris, if you're South Carolina, if you're the new coach, can you parlay this into some recruiting advantages? I don't know enough about necessarily how soccer recruiting works. I'm not going to pretend I do to know exactly what that might look like. But if I'm South Carolina recruiting a new coach, deciding who my new coach is going to be, I maybe try to use this to show my commitment to the sport, and B, whoever that new coach is are there built-in advantages here? I don't know, but I've always thought, even as someone who, again, has not really been a soccer fan, growing up right down the road for me, Northwestern soccer was always outstanding. Irmo soccer was always really, really good. I think these days, I think River Bluff and Dutch Fork, y'all can correct me if I'm speaking wrongly on that. But point being, lots of local teams that are really, really good traditionally in this state at soccer. So I've always sort of thought that, without really having a ton of local competition, there is no SEC soccer. There's a lot of programs locally that don't have major soccer programs, men's soccer programs. So you would think there would be something that South Carolina could maybe take advantage of there. So we'll see if that can continue. As you say, the sport is growing, and we'll see if South Carolina can take advantage. And we've seen South Carolina's women's soccer program excel.
Yeah.
So you would think that opportunity would be there for the men as well. So big day for South Carolina. I appreciated the way they promoted this. That's something we, and I would say the collective we, like not you and me, but just people who have been around South Carolina have sort of not always been impressed with the way they've sort of marketed certain things. But I think they did a good job of making this a big deal and presenting it as a big deal. And potentially, as you said, leads the way for more such partnerships moving forward. Let's talk a little bit of football. I want to start. We can maybe get into the team itself probably after Colin Taylor. We'll have him on like 2:15 or so. But I want to talk a little bit of NFL draft, because this is something Chris and I have talked about off the air, and we're inching ever closely to draft day here in a couple of weeks. And I think we're all, it's pretty much locked in. J.C. Horn will be the first South Carolina player drafted. Nobody, from the program is going to jump him. The question right now is just how high does he go? Where does he go? Latest mock draft I saw from Mel Kiper had him going, I think, 15th to the Cowboys. But Chris, there's been a little shift in some stuff that's out there publicly from these draft guys. And I believe you told me from some stuff you've heard as well from some people you talked to. Who do you think is going to be the second guy from the South Carolina football program drafted, and how high might they go?
So I think that behind Horn, the two contenders maybe for that spot, and I don't want to make a definitive statement on that, is that there's only two, but that seems most likely. Ernest Jones, whose stock has been up lately, he's gotten some buzz. I think it was Mel Kiper had him mocked in the second round, which I think was surprising to a lot of people that he was even that high. But talking to some people that I've spoken with about NFL Draft Matters in the last few days, there's a lot of, Ernest Jones, I like him or they like him. So certainly he's going to have a chance. I don't know if it'll be second round. When you get in that range, it's about who likes you and what the needs are. But certainly even before that, Wes, there were some folks that thought Ernest Jones could be a third round guy, a fourth round guy, somewhere in that range. So I think it's Ernest and then a Shi Smith. Shi Smith's another guy that's had sort of a pretty big range put on him. He tested well. He had a really good senior season at South Carolina in terms of his productivity. He's got good game tape. He shows competitiveness. I mean, we've talked about Shi Smith a lot on this program and what he can bring to the field. He's someone that sort of has that, maybe a 3 to 5 round type of range. Could he catapult up to the second, if something happened? Maybe. I think for a guy like Jones and Smith, the second round would probably be like the dream scenario for them in terms of probably their ceiling as far as how high they could go. And then if you look at maybe the floor, some people think about fourth or fifth round or so. Another one that's sort of, I don't know if he's in that category, but, Israel Mukwamu has been sort of, for lack of a better term, like polarizing a little bit among draft people. His ceiling, for instance, seems to be, some people think maybe fourth or fifth round is much more likely for him, and then he could fall back further just depending. So I think it's Jones and Smith probably make sense as the two guys that would be number 2 off the board as far as Gamecocks.
Well, and, we've talked about Ernest Jones on the show, and as far as him as a prospect, maybe a month or so ago. And I think what we said then was obviously, watching this kid play, we'll say really for the better part of the last couple of seasons when he really took over as the primary guy on this defense and the leader on this defense. I think Ernest Jones as a football player, you'll say, yeah, second round, that makes sense. This kid was a really good football player, extremely sharp, great IQ, great football IQ, and just a kid that is going to lead your unit if he's in that position. Like he's a guy who has natural leadership qualities. Yeah. The big question, and again, you're not really, sometimes people take these like criticisms to heart. You're not saying Ernest Jones is not a good athlete. You're saying, where does Ernest Jones stack up athletically compared to other NFL players, to other NFL linebackers, where you're talking about, the 1% of the 1% compared to everyone else athletically. So I thought, Chris, knowing what we know about Ernest as a player, you can say what you want about pro days and how the numbers are a little bit prettier than they are at the combine, but a 38.5-inch vertical. And again, we talk about this in scouting terms. A vertical is a sign of explosiveness. And, he ran a 4.72 40-yard dash. That's obviously not blazing, but not slow either. So I thought, let's see, the shuttle was a 4.38. I thought Ernest, as a guy who needed to show his athleticism, knowing what we already know about him as a player, it sounds like that was viewed as a pretty good showing for Ernest Jones at the pro day.
Yeah, it was. I think he helped himself there. He was a guy that, had good game tape and those qualities that you mentioned, Wes. But he was a guy that people, I think, maybe had some questions about with that. And I think he answered those. And I saw some people asking about Hutch. I wasn't, leaving Hutch out of that conversation per se in terms of actually being drafted. We were trying to maybe answer the question of, hey, who's the second? Because I think some people came into the draft thinking, well, Izzy's got to be the second guy drafted, right? And that's never really been the case. Hutch is probably that, another sort of range on him, 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, that kind of guy. So there'll be some others that have a chance, and Hutch is certainly one that it's expected that he'll be drafted somewhere.
Let's go ahead and bring in Colin Taylor, our Gamecock beat writer on GamecockCentral.com. Colin, I don't think we talked to you last week. So since then, South Carolina with another series win, obviously taking 2 of 3 over Missouri. They take care of business on Tuesday night against Charleston Southern. Now they get ready for this trip to LSU. We'll start with the win last night, man. sort of a business-like, did what they needed to do, jumped out to an early lead. Another, I thought, really good performance from Mahoney. What were your takeaways from last night as South Carolina just sort of did what they needed to do, and they took away any drama, which I think is what you always want to do on a midweek, and go ahead and you get to empty the bench, get some other guys out there. What were your thoughts on last night?
Yeah, it was as workmanlike as you can get. I mean, that's what you want when you're a top 10 team and you're playing a midweek game. You go out to a big lead, you throw some freshmen out there, get their feet wet, and you go home. And that's what they did. I mean, Jack Mahoney was fantastic. You got big contributions from the guys you needed to in the lineup for the most part. And then you threw 3 freshmen and a guy coming off Tommy John, and all of them combined to walk. I think the bullpen didn't walk anybody. Jack Mahoney walked 1 dude, and they gave up 4 hits. And so about as good a performance as you can get in the midweek. And they needed it because you get to go down to Baton Rouge now.
Yeah, Colin. So looking over LSU's numbers today, interesting team, it looks like. I mean, just sort of their body of work, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Offensive explosiveness, they put up 15 against Kentucky. But you look and, they lost the series to Mississippi State, understandable. But they're swept by Tennessee, who's a really good team, obviously. They're swept by Vanderbilt, obviously a really good team. Did you know that they lost a game to Oral Roberts this year, 7-22? You probably did know that. That was an odd scoreline. So sort of a hard team to figure out. But we'll dive in deeper, but what's your broad sort of picture overview of this team and this matchup?
It's a weird group. Obviously, LSU came in with really high hopes, a team that had super regional Omaha aspirations to them. They didn't get off to the start they wanted to. They've really struggled as of late. Losing their Friday night guy in Jaden Hill is a huge deal because he's like a projected not only first round or top 15 pick in the draft, and he's out for the year. So South Carolina's not going to have to deal with him. So it's a pitching staff that hasn't played well. They've hit for the most part this year. And it's just a group that hasn't lived up to expectations. We see it a lot with teams with talent, and sometimes teams don't live up to expectations early on. And it's a dangerous team for South Carolina to go down there against, and they've just hit kind of a wall as they battled a lot of adversity in SEC play.
Colin, there's been a lot of talk about the atmosphere at Founders Park and what's allowed and what's not allowed and what's right. Where's the line for heckling? And I'll readily admit I'm being the guy I hate on social media, and that I don't know what was being said. I don't know who's crossing the line, who's not. But my thought the entire time was I don't hear anybody complaining about what's probably said at LSU, because whenever I think of like big time atmospheres, you think of LSU. In baseball, I think of both Mississippi Parks and how they have a home field advantage. Can you give us sort of the latest on that whole drama at Founders? It sounds like the players have spoken. They as far as what side they stand on.
Yes.
And then maybe tie that into, hey, this is an LSU team, as you said, they've underperformed. But anytime you go to that park, I don't care what the attendance numbers are. I don't care about anything. You're gonna know it when you get to Baton Rouge. So can you maybe tie all those things together?
Yeah. First of all, let's ask any other player that has played outfield at South Carolina what it's like to go to other ballparks in the SEC, and they'll tell you the stuff that they've heard. They're letting the fans go now. I mean, it's been a pretty raucous crowd. It's been fantastic. It feels like college baseball this year. The students have been great. They have a name now that's not the third base hecklers. They're, I think, the Rowdy Roosters now. So fans love it. The players can't get enough of it. I mean, they love it. And it's so much fun. And they have a longer leash than they had in, past couple weeks. And you've seen it get into people's heads. And it's been a lot of fun. It reminds a lot of people, players, coaches, fans about those Sarge Fridays, the third base hecklers, the intimacy of it, where fans were on top of you. And yeah, South Carolina gets to go on the other end of that now with LSU. And I mean, I've talked to players that said playing at LSU was some of the most fun they've ever had playing, just because the fans are so into it. And you're going to know. And whether this team's, I think LSU's, I mean, I'm looking at 20 and 12, 3-9 in the SEC. That doesn't change anything. Those fans are going to be out there, and they're going to be as loud as you could possibly get. And you get 2 night games at Baton Rouge. It's not like it's a Saturday matinee and a Sunday getaway day. This is, 6:30 and 7 o'clock Thursday and Friday night. So, yeah, whether or not LSU's record-wise good enough, it's still going to be a great atmosphere, and I'm really, really excited about it.
Chris, let me get one more thing in on this one real quick. So obviously you were there, Colin, but I mean, it's like a couple of weeks in a row or home weekends in a row. Like Missouri's guys are freaking out. They've got a coach going into the stands.
Yeah.
The Florida guys, like, help me with the disconnect here. Like, is it because there's a limited crowd, so these guys are being heard, like what they're actually saying is being better heard? Because, I mean, I understand if people are dropping F-bombs around kids, like, calm it down, dude. But since when do players care that much to the extent that they're trying to fight people and cussing them out? Like, is this just what we live in? I don't get it, because I thought this has sort of always been a part of SEC sports, that's going on the road. That's what it is.
It just means more, right? It just means more. Listen, it'd be different if these games, for the most part, were close. South Carolina's been handing out more butt whoopings than not at home this year in the SEC. And when you get your butt handed to you, the way you're getting your butt handed to, a lot of it, and you have to hear it for 27 innings over the course of 3 days, probably not frustration probably boils over at some point. So that entire scene Sunday was just hilariously awesome. Yeah, I mean, we can't say it, but sure, yeah. But I mean, it was just awesome. The fact that you have the guys jawing at the shortstop coming off the field, and then Missouri's, I guess, I don't know if he was an assistant or a staffer or somebody, but hops over into the crowd to talk to the event staff and facilities to try to get them thrown out. And then in between innings, you have Stuart Lake coming over and pumping that same crowd up, and then getting into a verbal altercation with the same Missouri staff member. The funniest part of that was what they didn't see, and you don't see in the photos. The entire South Carolina dugout was like 3 steps out of the dugout, like jawing and chirping at Missouri. I mean, Thomas Farr, like your Friday night dude, was like further out than everybody else, pointing and as chirpy as you can possibly get. And they feed off that like this, and then they go put up a 5 spot in the 8th inning and put the game away. So the players love it. This is an emotional team. This is a group that loves to play with some emotion and stay aggressive. And when the fan base is, replicating that, I mean, it's a fun atmosphere to be a part of.
Might put you on the spot with this one, but any safe, non-explicit things you can pass that you've heard from your perch over there in the press box, in the open press box?
The Stuart Lake fan section, the cheering section for Stuart Lake, is hilarious. They do the ball 4 chant now. I mean, the Texas A&M, when you walk a guy. There's a lot. I can't repeat. Something you probably can't repeat.
Right.
But I really want to go sit down there for a game and just hang out with them and see what it's like, because it seems like a lot of fun. And there are probably a few adult beverages consumed over the course of 9 innings in that group.
That would be a good story for you. You could embed in the
innings. Yeah,
would have been a heck of a story if you did.
Let's make that happen, Kyle.
If you would have done that for the Missouri game,
there's something
classic.
Yeah. We'll get some. Hey, next game, Thursday night at Arkansas. You might see me down there in the stands.
There you go. Look at that.
You might.
I'm liking this. I'm liking this. So this weekend, also a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Obviously, so get ready tomorrow. Don't forget the game's on tomorrow. ESPNU, then let's see, SEC Network Plus on Friday and Saturday. And Colin, so probably not a surprise here, but Will Sanders officially gets to become the Sunday guy. Obviously, it's on Saturday this week, but the game 3 guy. I think we all sort of the way he's pitched, you knew he was going to get the ball, but they locked that in, make it official this week. How impressed with him have you been, and how important is it, or how much of an advantage is it just to know you have that guy on Sunday? It seems like for as long as I can remember watching SEC ball, even South Carolina, even some really good teams, you're sort of always, it seems like you're trying to find that third guy. Even the really good teams have a Friday, have a Saturday most of the time. You're trying to find the dude who can give you that consistent Sunday start. And Sanders, this guy is like the model of consistency. He gives up a home run on the first pitch of the game, then gives up a double, but he just keeps throwing strikes, right? He doesn't get in his own head. He doesn't walk a bunch of guys. How many Sunday games do you see where the starter is putting people on base because he doesn't trust his stuff? I think it's a huge weapon for South Carolina to just know going into that game, to have the confidence in this kid that he's going to give them a good start every single Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, most of your Sunday guys in the SEC, you have your 2 like draft dudes on a Friday. You have your first rounder on a Friday. You have like your 5th to 10th rounder on a Saturday, and then you have a freshman that's going to be, a top 10 rounder, first rounder in the future. And South Carolina is no different. I mean, Will Sanders is, has the potential to be a first round guy by the time he's done, but not every freshman is built like Will Sanders. I mean, Will Sanders, just from a mentality standpoint, he keeps a notebook. He watches games on his own and keeps a notebook and charts pitches for major league games. And just it's such a different mindset that he has to it, because he's studying it and studying pitch sequencing, and he's just so mature. I mean, he has the maturity of a junior or a senior in like an 18-year-old's body. So it's impressive. And, having him, and then if you can get Julian Bosnick or Brett Carey fresh for Sunday, that gives you 2 other guys with starter stuff and starter longevity and mentality to go out there and pitch later innings. And I mean, Brett Carey's fantastic late in games. And if you can get 4 or 5 out of Will Sanders, like they did against Missouri and they did against Florida, then you have a chance to win games. And it only helps when he goes into the 9th against Georgia and gives up 1 run on 8 hits.
Wanted to get your take on another individual, other side of the ball. Josiah Seitler, last seen hitting a ball to Mars last night, that grand slam. Wow. How has he gotten so much better? I'll just boil it down like that. Like, I remember when South Carolina signed him, decent amount of height behind him, right? He's sort of scuffled. This year he's turned it on, and he's really become, at times when he's on, a really good hitter.
Yeah. He's obviously a guy that turned down a pretty good chunk of change to come to school. I think he was drafted the 11th or 12th round. I mean, hype among hype for a guy like that. Billed as like, the next Justin Smoke because of his size and his left-handedness and all that. And just, you jump from playing South Carolina high school ball, and no disrespect to South Carolina high school ball, but you go from that to the SEC, and all of a sudden it's, instead of facing 88 to 89 on a consistent basis, maybe 92, 93, it's 95, 96 consistently. And he struggled with that, and he put in the work, and it took him a really long time to get there. But now he's making consistent contact, and he's not a guy, he's hitting over 300 or close to it. And he's not someone that is going to give you a 400 average or anything like that, but he's certainly not a guy that's going to go 0 for 4 and then 3 for 4 the next day. And that's how he gets his average. He's a guy that's pretty consistent, can hit for power when he wants to, really, good swing to it to where he can still choke up and control the bat while still hitting for power. And that's impressive. I mean, if you watch that missile that he hit last night, he was choked up on the bat and still was able to hit it 407 feet. So, I've been really impressed with his progress, and the coaching staff loves what he's done so far. And he's proven to be your number 3 guy. They needed someone to step up and hit behind a Braylon Wimmer and a Brady Allen, and you're getting that with a guy like Josiah.
Yeah, Colin, I was gonna say, man, he probably chokes up more than any like big big lefty type hitter. Chokes up more. He honestly, he reminds me a little bit in his approach and his swing and just how he looks in the box to like Kyle Martin when he was at South Carolina. And, Kyle's power sort of came as he got older and older. And he was a big dude, but more of a line drive hitter early in his career, and the power kept coming. And I feel like Seitler, he can turn on the power obviously when he needs to, but has really done a good job of being somebody who has good at bats and chokes up, makes contact, and has kind of been a surprise, I would say, in the middle of that lineup. And let's sort of segue that. I think Seitler has sort of stepped into a spot that the staff was probably hopeful when they recruited him that Brennan Malone could be. It's sort of that third hitter, the guy that other teams obviously have to take advantage or have to take account for, I should say. What have you seen from Malone? Y'all know I've been on the Malone train in that I'm like, if they can get this guy going, I'm seeing the flashes. Like I'm seeing
together. He's putting it together now.
It's starting. It's not all the way on yet, but the flashes are there.
Yeah.
Are you seeing better at bats from Brennan Malone in the last week or so?
Oh, absolutely. He was always a guy that, weirdly enough, took a lot of walks, even when he was struggling. Would still find a way to finesse some walks, and now he's just cut down on his strikeouts. I mean, he's doing a really good job not striking out. He's doing a really good job hitting for power. I can get into. I mean, he's widened his stance, and he's taking a shorter, load to the ball, and it's keeping his swinging. He doesn't have to really lunge out in front of a ball to hit it hard, and that's really helped him in terms of making consistent contact. And when he's not striking out, I mean, to have a guy like Brennan Malone, who was a top 100 kid, turned down, I want to say 6 figures to come to school and, work himself into being a first-round talent, which he could have been out of high school if he wanted to be, then you have a really good option at the bottom of that lineup when he's hitting 7th or 8th. And when he's playing the way he's playing, getting on base and doing what he needs to do from a power standpoint, the rest will come, I think. I mean, I'm looking at his SEC stats now. His on base percentage is .357. So that's what you want from a guy hitting 7th or 8th in your order. But yeah, I'm a big Brennan Malone guy. I was riding the hype train when he came in and was excited to see him last year and was bummed we didn't get it. But now we're starting to see a little bit of flashes of what Brennan can be and why West was conductor of that train last year now.
So to get back to, specifically the LSU series and this matchup, last thing I got for you personally, Colin, what is the expectation going into this series? I think you sort of, I think back to like the Texas series, you sort of just don't know. It's early in the season. Vandy, because of how good everybody knew they were, you sort of go into that one saying, well, South Carolina could lose that series. Wouldn't be a big surprise. Whereas you expect them to hold serve against Mizzou at home, which they did. What are the expectations for this series? Is it fair to expect South Carolina should go down there and take 2 of 3 or sweep, or is it a toss-up? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to expect the way South Carolina's playing, the way and the rankings and the metrics all dictate that South Carolina could easily take 2 or 3. But, would I be shocked if LSU ended up taking the series just because it's at home and it's still LSU and they still got dudes? Absolutely. I mean, in the SEC, things swing, so I don't think it's going to be a sweep. I think it'll be a situation where one team, a team's going to win a game, and they may split the first 2, like South Carolina's done the last 2 weekends, and it comes down to Sunday. Mm-hmm. So I could easily see that. And if you're South Carolina, the goal over these last 6 should be don't get swept on the road and win the majority of your games at home. And if you do that, more, the path to the postseason's there, and the path to potentially winning a regional or winning a host seed for a regional is there as well. So yeah, the expectation should always be to go down there and not get swept. And if you can win a series while you're down there, that's even better.
Colin, final thing I have for you here, man. Is there any concern, or should there be any concern you think about Thomas Farr? Just seems like maybe hasn't been quite as sharp the last few weeks, and I think maybe as the game goes on, you see the velocity drop a little bit once he starts getting into the middle innings. Is that cause for concern? Is it just sort of how it's played out? Something you're keeping an eye on, or not really?
It's something I'm keeping an eye on for sure. He's obviously not had his best stuff and his best starts the last 3 weekends with Florida, Vanderbilt, and Missouri, but he's just not getting the same swings and misses he was earlier in the year. And so they're adjusting to that. They're trying to, help him pitch more to contact instead of trying to get a lot of swings and misses. Because when guys aren't swinging at stuff out of the zone, then your pitch count gets worked up. You walk more guys, and you've seen that with him. So I think they're starting to make some adjustments. They're working through it, trying to iron out some of those kinks. And this is a big weekend for him against a pretty solid LSU offensive lineup. And we'll see how he does, because it's going to be a raucous atmosphere. And I think he went to Vanderbilt and shoved. So I'm going to be interested to see what it looks like against another good offensive lineup in another tough environment.
Good stuff as always, Colin. We'll let you get out of here, man. But hey, also a big weekend for my Braves and your Cubs.
I don't know what you're talking
Braves at Chicago. We'll see if I haven't been paying attention to what your team's been doing, but the Braves have been struggling. Yeah, so we'll see who can do worse this weekend. How about that?
Yeah. Hey, trust me, if I had to put money on, I'd say the Cubs right now. So
I got you, man. All right, Colin, we appreciate it as always, man. Have a good one, okay?
Awesome. Take it easy, y'all.
Colin Taylor, Gamecock Central. Go check out his work. And, again, go check out his story on the MLS deal as well. Man, Chris, could be you never want to count an LSU series in baseball as a W before it happens. Yeah. So it's not going to be easy. They actually, if you look at the numbers, some of their offensive numbers are slightly better than South Carolina's. Mm-hmm. It's their pitching that has been I would say actually a good bit worse than South Carolina's. If you're talking about, there's one earned run difference between South Carolina and LSU. That over the course of a season is like a really big difference. South Carolina allowing 3.36 earned runs per game, LSU averaging 4.41. So I tend to agree with Colin. I think this is probably a 2-1, or somebody takes 2 of 3 type series. But if they grab a win this weekend, you're going into the halfway point of SEC play, basically having taken 2 of every 3 games. Now we know some of that was in the they lost the series to Vandy, they swept Florida, those sort of even out. But as far as the record goes, you go in being 10-5, so that's statistically you've taken 2 of every 3. That in SEC play, to me, has always been the standard of what a really good team is.
Yeah, and I think it's like Colin said, man. I mean, you want to. I think in general, to expand on it even more, I mean, obviously you want to try to win as many series as you can going forward. I don't think it's not reasonable for any team playing the schedule that South Carolina does to say they need to sweep every series or they're not going to lose any games. It's just silly. But go win as many series as you can. And so South Carolina's been able to do that. Obviously, sweep Florida, great result. Had good results the past few weekends, and that's what they've got to keep up. And this is an opportunity. Tough place to play, sure. No doubt about it is. But this is an LSU team that I think has shown some, they've got some holes. And obviously, I'm glad Colin alluded to losing Jaden Hill. I mean, he's the type of guy that, huge talent. He's the type of guy that's, featured on Pitching Ninja, which Thomas Farr has been on there this year, and some other guys. But just has some nasty stuff, a future pro. For South Carolina to not have to face him is obviously pretty significant and helpful. And they, aside from Jaden Hill, have already had some pitching issues, as you alluded to. They've you go back and look at some of their score lines. They've given up, whether it's conference play or non-conference play, they've given up some runs, and so South Carolina is going to have to pitch well. They're going to have to survive. They're going to probably give up some hits. LSU's probably going to get some guys on base. It's a tough place to play, but it is, I think, a series that is winnable. And if you can go down there and win 2 of 3, that's a great result. If you could go down there and sweep, that's massive, even though it's not, it's not the best LSU team we've seen in a while, but it's still a really good team. I remember, talking about LSU series today made me think of, remember, I think it was 2005, and South Carolina went to LSU when LSU was, I think, number 6, and South Carolina was top 10 as well, and went down there and swept them. I think it was 2005. And that's something that longtime Gamecock baseball fans still talk about. So, going to be a big series this week, and should be a good one.
We'll certainly have it covered on GamecockCentral.com. Colin Taylor will. Chris and I will have it covered by sitting at home and watching it on TV. But, dude, so let's close out with a little bit of football talk, football team talk. No football availabilities for South Carolina as far as media responsibilities yesterday. None today as well. We should get something as the week progresses. I think we're getting somebody tomorrow, maybe. I know at some point, I think Friday, we're going to get Pete Limbo and Eric Kimry. And, of course, we've sort of continued to track what's going on, who's standing out, who's not standing out. I wrote a piece last week when you were on vacation, diving into the linebackers, Chris. And I think it's kind of been interesting. We haven't really, I don't think, had a chance to dive into that position here on the show. And it's been interesting how this staff has approached sort of who's working with the ones, who's working with the twos, knowing there is a clean slate for everybody. So there's a lot of rotation. I've sort of looked at it, the way Beamer has talked about the quarterbacks, for example. He said, look, Luke Doty has played. It's up to the other guys to rise to his standard. And it seems to me like the guys who have either done it on the field, combined with maybe some seniority in there, combined with, I guess, whoever has worked the hardest this offseason, it's almost like they get like first right of refusal, like first opportunity to go take the job.
Yeah.
And then it's up to them to take advantage for that opportunity, and up to the younger, more inexperienced guys to step up and beat them out. And at linebacker, we've seen sort of an interesting shift where Sherrod Green right now working with the ones at the Mike linebacker spot, which I was trying to think, Chris, he's predominantly in his career been a Sam and a Will.
Yep.
I think I remember there being times where we heard in practice in the past where he maybe sort of mixed in at the Mike and played there a little bit. But as far as games go, as far as like how he's actually been used, he's primarily been one of the two. And he was actually really good. You want to go back 2 seasons ago, 2019. He had his best year playing the Sam. Now, as we know, the Sam is only on the field when they're in a 3 linebacker personnel. So talking about a 4-2-5, that's probably the base scheme right now, the base personnel. The Sam is not on the field. The nickel spot replaces the Sam. So now he's playing Mike. And an interesting, even bigger shift would be Brad Johnson now playing the Will. And as we know, Brad Johnson has played quite a bit of Buck, and he has played some Sam as well. In the old scheme, the Sam and the Buck were sort of tied together, similar players, similar requirements. Even though the Sam is a linebacker spot, you're not being asked to cover a lot. The Will, you're going to be in space quite a bit more. You're going to be asked to cover at times. We've talked a bunch about how Clayton White's scheme has a lot of man coverage. Your linebackers are in man coverage as well. So to me, that's an interesting conversation there. Can now 2 guys that are coming off injuries, 2 guys that are hoping to have their best ball in, what I'd assume would be their final seasons, and 2 guys that are in slightly different positions than they've played before. So, can they hold off a Debo Williams, a Mo Kaba, some of these other guys? To me, will be a big just question throughout the offseason and going into the season. Can they step up and handle that position?
Yeah, no doubt. And I think we cover a lot of the I guess, concerns or strengths of the teams. Everybody thinks of, prove it positions like receiver, defensive back. When you look at maybe the biggest concern on this football team going into, this spring and this season, defensive back would be the one, not just on the defense, but probably overall. I think you put linebacker in that concern category for the reasons that you're talking about, because you got some guys that are switching positions. They're coming off injuries. You got some other inexperience and sort of projecting some guys as needing them to be able to step up. Now, all these pieces could fit. It all could work out, and they could be pretty good there. And this group will be playing behind a defensive line that, while it's not without questions, generally regarded, particularly in the pass rush department, is probably going to be pretty good. But these are questions. They're valid questions. And from what we picked up, Wes, I think there is still some, maybe concern, maybe alarm. Those might be too strong, but linebacker has some questions that have to be answered through the spring, the summer, into the preseason. And that's why you have practice. So, the Johnson move is one of the more interesting ones on this team in the offseason. I totally agree with you there. You remember during the recruiting process, 2017, I was always a fan of Brad Johnson as a prospect. Hasn't worked out as I thought and others thought, for a lot of reasons. And I think number one, you look at his freshman year, he probably needed a red shirt, but he was forced into action. I think, you look at during his career, he's had a couple injuries that he's dealt with, and now you have a position change. And while Brad Johnson is probably more natural playing with his hand in the dirt, particularly as he kept growing, now he's scaled that back a little bit, playing in space. The thing that you do believe and project in this move is that he's not going to be afraid to be physical. He'll have some heavy hands. He'll probably be strong against the run. But it's like you said, Wes, the coverage aspect, I think, is the thing you got to look at. Sherrod Green at the mic has shown a knack for, when he was playing so well at Sam, making instinctual plays in space. He'll need that at the mic position too, in coverage and in chasing down ball carriers. So 2 intriguing moves, and 2 moves that, along with the other guys stepping up, the staff needs to stick and for those guys to continue developing.
Yeah, and I think it's a prudent move by the staff to do this, because you're sort of you're always trying to get your best guys on the field, and you're trying to get, frankly, as little inexperience, so as much experience on the field as possible. And now if a younger guy, as I said earlier, if a younger guy just beats the older guy out, then it is what it is. But you're always trying to get guys on the field who have played. And I think, nothing against Brad at all, but if you were going to sort of just slot Brad back as sort of an edge only guy, the guys that are there right now, the Enigbares, Jordan Birch, Aaron Sterling, Jordan Strong coming in, he's not going to have near as much of an opportunity to go make a lot of plays and get on the field. He'd be in the rotation, but he's got a chance to start if he can take over this will linebacker spot and show that he can do those things you're talking about. I think this move has not gotten near as much attention because they just say, oh, he sort of played the buck, or he played the Sam linebacker. He played that anyway. Well, to me, this is a true position move. Like, it's a very different responsibility at that spot compared to these other spots that he's played. So that will be something, there's only so much, Chris, that we can see from spring practice, especially when we're not actually seeing much of it. But I think watching the spring game, that's maybe a guy, if you're a fan who wants to maybe think of a few storylines to dial in on, watch Brad Johnson, watch 19 at linebacker. How is he moving around? How is he doing in coverage? How is he in space? Against some pretty good tight ends, right? Generally, in man coverage, your linebackers are going to end up, across from a tight end or a running back out of the backfield in pass coverage. So that would be something to keep an eye on for South Carolina moving forward. I tend to think the adjustment for Green to the mic maybe not quite as big of a deal as Brad Johnson to the will. Just my opinion. And they even talked about how there's less on the mic in this scheme as far as the communication. The defensive linemen are heavily involved, defensive tackles specifically are heavily involved in the communication aspect, setting your front and things like that. Whereas I think reading between the lines in the old scheme, a lot of that was on the Mike linebacker to make sure those things were handled. So sometimes when you transition a guy to the mic, you're worried about that part of things. I don't think that's quite as big of an issue here for Sherrod, who is a self-admitted, he said this himself, he's not that super vocal guy. He's not what Ernest Jones is as far as continuously talking. But as a veteran now, he should be able to handle the responsibilities that go with that spot, I think.
Yeah. And, with someone that like Sherrod, who's got sort of that inside, quote unquote, playing experience, like you said, Wes, at times, I recall the same thing, been able to get a look at the previous regime at Mike, and certainly some experience at Will, which is in that older scheme, Will Muschamp's scheme, considered an inside linebacker. So not a little bit more of a natural transition, a little bit different, obviously, being the Mike, but I think, with his skill set and what it's going to be like in the scheme is something that could very well take. And I think beyond these two, obviously you mentioned some of the guys. I mean, a Mo Kaba, Debo Williams, you look beyond them, a Jamar Brown, Damani Staley's played a lot of football. My understanding is he's had a pretty good spring where he can be a depth guy for this team still. And he's obviously got a lot of experience. Rosendo Lewis, still being around as another guy, Wes, that has just been hampered by injury so much. So as time progresses and he gets to see more and more snaps, there are some guys on this roster in terms of bodies and guys that have some talent that could help, but they just need those guys to continue taking a step forward. Some of them, I think Shane Beamer mentioned the other day, Jamar Brown has not always been full go this spring. So some guys you're getting reacclimated. Some guys are here for the first time, like a Debo Williams. Some guys like Brad Johnson undergoing position change. So again, just questions that they have to continue to answer.
Do you see the comment here from Nathan, Chris?
I do. My curiosity is piqued. Let us do his background. Does this mean, Nathan, that you have some type of screen printing company, or is it just, are you going to draw something? I don't know. Is it paper? Let's get some more details on that. But I am interested.
That's an intriguing idea.
That's a very intriguing idea.
For those who are not on video and just on audio, Nathan says that Chris needs to let us, I believe us is the people in the chat, or Nathan's company, I don't know, do his background. Are you game? Let's put up a Gamecock logo and the names of some regulars to the show. Somebody says finger paint. Yeah, Nathan, if you can go draw on Chris's wall anytime. But no, so seriously, if we had a sponsor, this could work. If we had a sponsored listener of the week or listener of the month, maybe we could give them a prize from the sponsor and then put their name on the board or behind you, sort of like an employee of the month gets their name on the wall at at where they work. So you could have that right above Chris, but keyword being sponsor.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people listen to the show. Let's do it. Even if, Wes, I mean, we prefer to work with really good companies, but, I mean, what if our man Steven right here asking how much it is to sponsor? Are we opposed to the Steven Witherspoon member or listener of the month? I am not. I'm not opposed.
He can be the listener of the month every time if he sponsors it.
That's right. Self-awarded.
Steven, I'll tell you what, dude. I don't know if you have a company that you're involved in or on and want to sponsor the show or sponsor part of the show, and anybody listening, if you want to talk about it, just shoot me an email, Wes@GamecockCentral.com. That's Wes@GamecockCentral.com, and I'll be happy to talk about some of those opportunities. Obviously, our presenting sponsor is our man Clint Hammond, but we do have opportunities for other sponsors if it's the right fit to be on the show. So we'd love to hear from you, Steven, or love to hear from anyone else listening or watching that is interested in that. All right, Chris, I think that's going to do it, man. You got any final thoughts? Anything else we need to hit? I'm trying to think if anything else has happened since Monday that we have not covered.
I think I'm sure we're missing something.
Clowney.
Clowney, yes. There you go.
Clowney found a home, the Browns, and that it seems like from what the NFL guys were reporting, it's sort of been headed this direction for a while.
Yeah.
They team him up with Myles Garrett, bookends there. Great duo on paper. Now Clowney's, let's be honest, Clowney's production has not been the last couple of years quite what you would want it to be, and a lot of it has just been injuries. To me, I mean, Chris, I don't think he's ever been quite the same as he's had to deal with the various knee issues he has had. But still, if you're Cleveland, you're bringing him in on a 1-year deal.
Yep. So
it's worth taking the chance, because if it works out and he can start to get back to, what he close to what he was before, then watch out quarterbacks that have to face Cleveland this year.
Yeah, that's right. It's a win-win. And for Clowney, I mean, obviously you're a player, almost any player in almost any situation, there are exceptions. You're going to want long-term deals, right? That's why you see even guys who are franchise tagged, that means a bucket load of money, but they'd rather have long-term deals. But for Clowney, this is a situation where if he's healthy and he produces for the Browns and they have a good year and he's very productive, then he's going to create himself a market again, whether it's from the Browns or from a bunch of other suitors for multi-year deals. And so it's about getting on the right track for him, for Cleveland, a team that has aspirations, of being in the postseason. You take a flyer of 1 year on a guy with a proven track record and a lot of talent in Clowney and hope he gets back to that form.
Let's see, Chris, we did have a question about the Frank Martin media availability. That has actually been moved to Thursday. That was originally going to be today, but because of the MLS partnership announcement, it got pushed back. Trying to find it now. 9 a.m. tomorrow, so 9 a.m. Thursday. That will be an interesting press conference. And that just jogged my memory. One other, I don't know if it's a small note. I don't think it's a big note. Maybe a medium note. Caslin talking today.
Yeah.
Said the aim, the hope, I don't know what words he used. Hope is probably the word, is to have a full capacity crowd at Williams-Brice if it is deemed safe to do so, if the public, the CDC guidelines, all that stuff allows it. I tend to think we're probably headed that direction. By the way, got my second shot today. If you're still looking for a place to do it, Gamecock Park. I was in and out literally in 30 minutes, including the 15-minute wait. So very efficient. It actually was way faster than when I got my first one. So if that's what you're looking for, still a very quick opportunity in this area for you to go get that done. And I just do that, as I've said before, I think with the vaccine being available and being effective, if, whether individuals themselves take it or don't take it is up to them. But just with it being available, certainly to everyone by the time football season is here, really in our area in Columbia, it's available to anyone that wants it right now anyway, already. I tend to think you're probably looking at 100% unless there's just some completely unforeseeable setback that we just can't know right now.
Yeah, I would agree. It certainly seems to be moving in that direction. I think even as of maybe a couple months ago when the vaccine started rolling out or whenever that was, you're still wondering, okay, how's the rollout going to go? But given the availability, I agree with you. And it does appear, just based on the early comments, that they are going to lean on some type of guidance from some authorities on the matter. But you would anticipate that everybody in college football is going to do everything possible and going beyond college football, college athletics, to open back up. Because as we've said, it's not sustainable to go through another year close to what happened last season. And that wouldn't happen this year, given what, the state of affairs with the vaccine and all that stuff. But it does appear to be moving closer, trending closer, to full stadiums, which will be very, very interesting.
And, Chris, Ray Tanner did apparently hint that baseball could could be able to get some more people in there soon. So, we're talking about the rowdiness of the stadium and that conversation earlier with Colin. That would be interesting. I would imagine not full go 100%, but that there's a possibility there for them to be able to get a few more fans in, which I think the fan base will obviously be excited about. I thought this was interesting. The Fireflies, they've announced, I believe, 50% with their home opening series coming up in May, and they literally have some areas where some areas are very much like socially distanced, and then even into like berm areas, I don't remember who sponsors their berms, but in the berm areas, it's like one berm is completely blocked off. Everybody's like it's chalked off, basically separate out, and then the other berm is like do whatever you want. So it's literally they took the approach of, if you wanted to be more comfortable, go sit here. If you want to make your own decision and you don't care about it, go this way. So an interesting approach from them as kind of their way of maybe giving both sides to this situation an opportunity there. But obviously, point being, we're getting back closer to normal, and I know a lot of people will be excited for that, and maybe excited to get some more fans in there for baseball. So, all right, Chris, you got anything else, man? I think we did hit it all now.
Yeah, we did this time for real. Yeah, no close.
All right, good stuff. He's Chris. Thanks to Colin for joining us earlier. Thanks to everybody. A good chat group today. Appreciate everybody joining us. T says, what about the spring game? Any increase there? That's been talked about as well. I tend to think there's a decent possibility that a few more people are allowed to get in for that as well. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. For Chris, I'm Wes. Appreciate y'all. We'll talk to you.